Alright guys, welcome back to the channel where today we're talking WWE 2K22 as we have some interesting news coming from well-known Forbes writer Brian Mazique, as Brian's been sharing updates from people who've tried the latest version of WWE 2K22. He's been revealing what they had to say, plus he's also teased the addition of a huge new game mode. Before we get into any of that though, if you're new to the channel and you want to stay up to date with all the latest news on WWE 2K22, please do hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss out on future videos. So let's talk WWE 2K22, as Brian Mazique, who is a well-known journalist in the community that's known for his work covering both WWE and NBA 2K games for Forbes, he set the community abuzz with some new inside information on the reaction to this year's gameplay changes and talk of a new game mode. Now, before we get into this, I do want to stress that although Brian says that this info is fact and it's not speculation, none of this is confirmed by 2K or Visual Concepts. So let's go over what was said, starting out with some details that Brian shared regarding the roster, as there's been a lot of talk in the community surrounding the recent releases and whether those stars will be included or if they'll be cut. To try and clarify the situation, Brian noted that it's not as simple as anyone who's been released being instantly taken out, as there is a specific deadline date in which the roster is locked in place, and once that deadline passes, no more changes can be made, no one can be added in, and more importantly, nobody can be taken out. Despite this, Brian did note that there is one exception to this, which is covered under exceptional circumstances, and that's if WWE get in touch directly and they request a specific star be taken out. However, that only happens on very rare occasions. One such occasion of recent note was the unconfirmed reports that WWE had contacted 2K to request the removal of Daniel Bryan after it was reported that he may be set to sign with AEW. Without having a release date for the game, Brian said that it's impossible to know when the cut-off date is, especially if the game was to get pushed back. However, he expects that we'll see around 50% of all the recent releases make the cut. Switching over to the topic of gameplay, which is something that we appear to be set for big changes in, Brian shared some of the reactions that he's had from people that he's spoken to who've played the latest build of the game, and he repeatedly stated that they say it's fantastic.
I have actually spoken with people who have good knowledge of the game and understand what's happening from a developmental standpoint, where it is, that whole nine, right? And what I'm told about gameplay at this point is that it is fantastic. That is actually the word that was used for the latest build. The people who are playing the latest build have said the gameplay is fantastic. Now, you take that with a grain of salt. You take that for whatever it is, because think about it. Anybody who is talking about gameplay at this point is probably somewhat close to 2K. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I have been told that the game is playing fantastic.
As for the new controls, whilst Brian says that he hasn't played the game himself, he did state that he's been told the controls are much cleaner this year, with the same person who told him that, claiming that this year's game feels more like a wrestling fan's wrestling game, as it's something that the developers are said to be working exceptionally hard on, as they want to make sure that they get it right, with Brian claiming that the dev team more than anyone else recognise how bad 2K20 was, therefore they want to correct that in 2K22. Whilst all of this does sound very promising, Brian did say to take all of this with a pinch of salt, as the people who told him this are said to be very close to 2K, therefore obviously they're going to say it's good. So we've covered what Brian had to say in regards to the roster and the gameplay, all of which Brian said is what he knows and it's not an opinion. However, the most interesting thing that he had to say was what he talked about next, as Brian began speaking about a new game mode which he titled MyFaction. I've watched the live stream of him talking about this twice now, and I found it very odd, as he didn't specifically say that this was something that's been worked on for 2K22. Instead, he brought up the mode and then he switched to talking about how he originally pitched the idea for this during a 2K19 press event when speaking with creative director Lionel Jinx. So what is this new mode? Well, from what Brian said, his pitch was a take on NBA 2K's MyTeam, which is a popular game mode in the NBA series in which players can open up packs and obtain rewards to help them create their ultimate team featuring both current stars and legends. Bryan included a few examples of how he thinks this could work with WWE, with one example being when a superstar wins a championship, as that could lead to 2K releasing a boosted version of that star with higher stats, which players could then try to obtain. He also noted the ability to feature legend cards, or cards that are set around special events, with one example being WrestleMania. If MyFaction is something that's in the works, then this could be a big thing for the game, as it's essentially a console version of WWE's Supercard, which continues to be one of WWE's most successful titles. As I stated earlier, Bryan never specifically noted this as something that's been worked on for 2K22, however he ended the segment by stating if not this year, we definitely see something like this next year. Now, based on that line, it doesn't sound like this is something that he's been told is confirmed for 2K22, but maybe it's something that is being planned for the future. As Bryan isn't someone who works for 2K Sports, then none of what he said can be classed as being confirmed, even when he states that it comes from someone who has played the game and then relayed that information to him, as 2K have stated that anything that doesn't come from an official source must be classed as speculation. So that's everything that Bryan had to say, a lot of which does sound very promising, especially if the talk of a WWE version of MyTeam is something that's being worked on, as I think that is something that will add a lot of replayability to the game and keep people coming back. However, it would all depend on what the mode would include and how heavy it was with microtransactions. So let me know what you think of this and what you make of Bryan's remarks in the comments, and if you want to check out his video in full, then I'll leave a link to it in the video description. As always, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news on WWE 2K22, please do hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time though, thank you so much for watching this video, have yourself an awesome day, and I'll catch you later.